Trials of a Royal Guard. By Ansel. Chapter 7. 1 year later. Vinber Province, the front line. At least as it stood today. I trotted along the rows of tents and up to the one that was mine. The sun was starting to get low in the sky and managed to hit my visor in just the right way to practically blind me. "Welcome home, Dread Knight," came the annoyingly cheerful voice of Major Regia once I went through the flap into our shared home. "Don't call me that, Reggie," I replied before reaching back to undo the fasteners on my helmet. He snorted and rolled his eerie red eyes. "And why not, mate? That is what the Griffins call you, isn't it? Dread Knight and his black dragoons." I pulled the helmet free and set it on the stand. Then I started working at the breastplate. "You could call me Silent Knight, Major Knight, or just, hey you. Whatever you pick, don't call me that." Sure," he came over to help me remove my armor. "I swear, do we need all of this? How do you even fly?" The war had necessitated a few fast advancements in protective gear, a major one being sturdier suits of armor that covered more of the body. The old suits just weren't up to the viciousness of the Sudramore Griffins. "Really? Are you making a joke? An earth pony asking a Pegasus how to fly? You flap your wings, Reggie." This was our usual dance. We did it practically every day as if it were rehearsed. The cerulean-coated stallion pulled the breastplate free and set it on the stand. "I'm serious, I can barely walk around in this junk for a full day and you go flying in it. Yours is made out of steel. That is your problem. That, and you're getting round around the middle. My middle still looks good and my suit, on the other hoof, is made from Cloudsdale steel, a Pegasus invention I should note, and weighs a fraction of the amount. After all, you earth ponies don't corner the market on all technology, you know." I pulled the foreleg bracers off and then the hind leg as he removed my back and flank plates, leaving me in my chain mail. "I'll remember that crack about my middle," he grumbled. I slumped onto the ground and sighed. "Seriously, though, this stuff is pretty heavy. I'm worn out. Did I miss lunch?" He shook his head. "No, you missed lunch and dinner. Where were you?" Casually, I motioned off in a random direction. "Sudramore raiders have been ambushing supply convoys north of here. Brigadier Hammer was getting annoyed with it, so, he sent you." "Yup. Did you get them?" "Of course we got them. We let them ambush a decoy convoy full of infantry and then swooped in from the direction intelligence said they were operating from. Caught them right in the middle." Reggie nodded. "Good work. How many prisoners?" My head tilted. He sighed. "Right. Did they try to surrender?" I shook my head. "Never got the chance. It is kind of hard to do so when you have a company of archers shooting at you from behind and you fly headfirst into a company of lancers. Anyway, the situation is resolved. I'm going to go get some food." Reggie sighed again. "What?" I asked. "I'm ready to go home, Silent Knight. This is getting out of hoof. Do you know how long we've been here?" "To the hour." "Look, I want to leave, too, but we can't, okay? It isn't like you and I volunteered for this. Celestia knows at this point there aren't any more volunteers. Positions open and we're chosen to fill them. That is the reality right now, so buck up, get it together, and do this job as best you can so you can be sure you and your troopers can go back home. When we do that, we can go back to being guards, if we ever can go back. Now, I'm going to get something to eat. Do you want to come with me or not?" Reggie sat in silence for a while, the turmoil obvious on his face. We both struggled with our lot in life these days. Finally, he found his composure and shook his head. "Nah, I ate, plus I'm waiting for my patrols to return. Oh, by the by, you got another letter from the missus. I know how fast you like to turn those around. It's on your desk." My eyes shifted that way, finding a pink envelope that stood out among all of the other items there. Thanks. I wanted to go to it immediately, but I had to eat. I'd need the energy. I shifted my attention back to my tent mate. Speaking of my missus, how is your wife? Surly as ever and man, do I miss her. Did I ever tell you how we met? Over 200 times, I replied. Then we said together, it was love at first fight. I chuckled. Yes, I'll be back in a minute. Back out into the camp I went. The sun was finally setting in the distance. At least now it was at my back. I could feel it through the black chainmail that covered my entire body. Even in camp, we wore it. The Sudramore had a talent for getting their soldiers close enough with crossbows. Not that I really expected a suit of chainmail to save me from a crossbow, but it beat the alternative. I was halfway to the chow tent when I saw one of my lancers heading straight for me. There was no mistaking his intent. He was after me. Some pony somewhere wanted my attention because he, of all ponies, knew better. It was somewhat amusing to watch him approach. He'd come a long way since the old days of fighting for my honor. Under the dark chainmail and plate was a straw-colored Pegasus stallion. A sweet one at that. Once he came to a stop, he saluted. Sergeant Tumble, I said while returning it. What can I do for you? I'm sorry to bother you, sir. I know you prefer to have a little downtime after an operation, but the civvies want to see you. They grabbed me when we got back before I could escape to my tent. They seem to have a knack for that. They certainly did. Having civilian liaisons with the army was, more often than not, a huge annoyance. It took every bit of effort not to roll my eyes. What now? He cleared his throat and pulled his visor down to hide his face. Two green eyes peeked fearfully out from the narrow slit. They want you to speak at the remembrance ceremony, sir. What? Yes, sir. They sent me because they felt like I'd be the last pony you'd kill. He was right about that. It was highly unlikely I'd kill my staff NCO. Would you please get my dinner, take it to my tent, and figure out some way to keep it warm? Get some for you, too, and something sweet for Major Regia. Thunder Tumble's head titled. Are you still trying to fatten him up, sir? Yes. I find it endlessly amusing. Now get to it. Yes, sir, he replied before hurrying off. The civilians wanted me to speak at the remembrance? What an awful idea. At least this time I got a day's notice. Usually they wanted something the day prior to asking. I trotted through the tent city and up onto the small knoll where the civilian liaisons had put their makeshift office together. It wasn't a bad structure, to be frank. They'd managed to get 4 wooden walls together and a canvas roof. There were a few offices inside and even a small washroom. Imagine that. Leylines looked up from her desk and sort of smiled. It was more of an attempt. She's waiting for you. Thanks. Knock, knock, I called as I walked inside the office behind her. Major Knight, just the pony I was hoping to see, came the sweet voice of Deputy Ambassador Rosetta Stone. Somehow, even in a war zone, she maintained a relatively positive attitude. The war hadn't quite hardened her like the rest of us. Yes, you sent my favorite sergeant as an offering. Why in the name of the Alicorns would you want me to speak at that ceremony? Her head tilted, causing her short reddish mane to bob. Why? Really? Come on now. She held up a forehoof and started tapping it with the other. You were there, you saved lives, you saw the harmony go down, you've built quite a name for yourself since then. I mean, that whole thing in Saddle Arabia alone. That was amazing. Come on, Major, these ponies don't want to hear me or the ambassador drone on and on about a peace that isn't any closer today than it was a year ago. They want to hear from a soldier that knows what it feels like to have lost. Please, do it for me. Do it for the ambassador. Do it for every pony. My wings twitched in irritation. How do you always get your way? I like to think it's my earnest disposition, she replied. I'm late for my dinner. Fine, tomorrow I'll give a 2-minute speech and then I'm going back to my company. Take it or leave it. She folded her forelegs across her chest and tossed her mane. 2.5 minutes and you have to sit on the stage with the delegation for the whole thing. Sit on the stage? Absolutely not. I'd be a guest speaker at best. I wasn't going to sit there and let everyone stare at me. Unless... Who's in the delegation? Several unicorn mares. A few of whom, I can assure you, are cuter than me. Several, hey? Not as cute as my mare, I was certain, but, then, my mare wasn't in a war zone and thank Celestia for that. My eyes narrowed at her. The negotiation had to go on. 2 minutes and I'll sit on the stage, but so help you if they aren't cute, I'm not doing you any more favors. Deal. I turned to go, but her magic tugged at my tail. Major, wait a moment. Sergeant Tumble said you were in a nasty fight today. Yes, I replied without looking over my shoulder. Every fight with the Sidramore Griffins was nasty. That never changed. Not today, not ever. Nervously, she asked, did we lose anyone? Not today, ma'am. Not a pony nor griffin in my company, nor any in the decoy group. No letters going home. Although we've got several going north for medical treatment. They'll all make it, though. She breathed a heavy sigh of relief. One good day. Yes, ma'am. One good day. I left it at that since there was nothing else to say. Any day where we didn't lose a soldier was a good day and those days were rare. My trot back to the tent was, thankfully, uneventful. From outside, I could hear Reggie chuckling. That was good. He was an excellent officer and all-around kind pony. He took loss more personally than I did, though, and in a different way. It hurt him. I tossed the flap back and found him sitting with Thunder Tumble, the two of them sharing a bit of cake. Sergeant, I told you to stop bringing the major sweets, I said before going to my desk, where my meal was waiting. Thunder, who had quickly stood to attention, replied, I'm sorry, sir. I get the orders confused. I thought you said to bring him something sweet. Ah, I see. At ease, I muttered before sitting down and picking up the letter from Crystal Wishes. These envelopes were what kept me focused. I just held it in one hoof while I ate with the other. What could be in this one? Had Crystal done something amazing? She'd done a lot of amazing things in a year. Anything to keep herself busy, but it was more than that. So much more. As I'd grown in a direction I had no taste for, she'd grown in her passion. It was a blessing. After wolfing down the food, whatever it was, I carefully opened the envelope and pulled the letter free. It was, of course, on pink paper and a little glitter fell out. Then there was the scent of rose petals. The perfume my wife wore. I held the letter close for a moment before reading it, vaguely aware of Reggie and Thunder laughing about something behind me. That is something you get used to when sharing a tent in the field, having alone time with others around. My dearest knight, let me not delay in the topic that I am sure is dominating your days. The remembrance of the harmony may have passed by the time this letter reaches you. Not much of the war affects Equestria as a whole. It is, some days, as though there is not one at all. For most ponies, I doubt they give it a second thought. That is not so as the Remembrance Day approaches. No pony forgets. Wreaths of yellow ribbons hang from every door. At first, I was upset. Angry, even. I'm sure that must seem to be a confusing reaction, so let me explain. When news of the harmony reached us, the tragedy was felt in the hearts of every pony in Equestria. We mourned as a kingdom. In some ways, it brought us all together, we, the military-minded civilians, and they, the non-military civilians, were no longer separated. For a time. Days went on, and slowly, life returned to normal for most. Now, as the Remembrance Day grows near, they've suddenly remembered the tragedy, the loss. Now they choose to remember that my love and his comrades are across the sea. It made me so terribly bitter that I stayed indoors the whole day after seeing the yellow ribbons that felt like a mockery of your sacrifices. But I've come to terms with it. It is not a mockery, but respect. They are stepping out of the comfort of their daily lives to acknowledge the thing which no Pone wants to think about. I don't know what telling you all of this will do. I suppose, really, that I hope it will help you to know that we have not forgotten. The losses will be mourned and honored, and though after some time these ponies will return to what they know as normal, they do remember. Just as they are taking the time to remember the war, it similarly helps me to remember that here, life does continue. Do you recall High Horse, my foalhood friend? Last year, she had a foal? It was some time before you left that Claire de Lune was born. She is a year old now. Can you believe it? She has grown so much. She is absolutely beautiful. And on the topic of Horsey, she is pregnant with her second foal. Her pregnancy is coming along just fine. She is due in a few months. They are thinking of having a third after this one is born. 3 foals. When you finally come home, I want foals of our own. 100 foals, even. I think that is only fair, don't you? I jest, of course. I would be happy just to have you by my side again. That is more than enough for me, so please, my love, continue to do as you have and stay safe. I will continue to keep you in my thoughts. Yours, always, Crystal wishes. Deep inside, I felt warmth. The small bit of warmth that was reserved for me and my wife. It was something that I kept hidden and protected. That was a necessity of war. There were parts of ourselves we had to keep separate from the horrors around us. It was a lesson learned over a year. Without a word, I wandered past Reggie and Thunder and out of the tent to where I could see the endless night sky. I pumped my wings and flew to the hill that stood opposite the brigade command area. It was the highest point and sported a tall lookout tower. The ponies manning it rarely cared when I visited the ground below them. Far overhead were hundreds of stars, all burning brightly out in the distance. Other than flying or being somewhere outside of our walls, this was as close as I could get to them these days without risking life and limb. While I stood there contemplating that, Captain Bringia, my executive officer, approached and stood next to me. We didn't exchange any words and she didn't come to attention. We just didn't do that on this hill. This wasn't about the army or the war. This was just about us. The griffin ruffled her feathers after a mighty shake before looking up. Soon, others from my company came. Some nights there were a lot of them, others very few. Tonight, there were a lot. It had been a bloody day and there was much to be thankful for. I'd take 20 injured in action over a single killed any day of the week. That was the war, though. This wasn't about the war. My focus returned to the stars. In each and every star, I saw Crystal Wish's touch. She had kept her promise because they danced with her love and I felt less lonely. For a brief moment, I smiled and whispered, "I'll come home." And the others around me repeated it, "I'll come home." Author's note: a year lost to war. A year away from home. What happened between the destruction of the harmony and now? Wait and see. All will be revealed, but not in the order you anticipate and, perhaps, not in the way you expect. If you are enjoying this story, please consider taking a look at Crystal and Maya's website quillenblade.com for extra content such as mini stories, an Ask Us form to submit questions, responses to said questions, and special rewards for the awesome folks who support our Patreon. End author's note.